Stop what you are doing. I need you to stop whatever else you had planned for the next few minutes and give me your complete, undivided attention. Because what I am about to walk you through today is not a rumor, it is not a hot take, it is not an opinion dressed up as a fact. What I am about to walk you through is documented, time-stamped, publicly posted evidence that the WNBA, a professional sports league with national television partners, corporate sponsorships, and a growing audience of millions, either deliberately engineered or catastrophically bungled a brand new statistic in a way that produced results so disconnected from observable reality that the entire basketball internet erupted within hours of the graphic going live. I am Dre Fiver. You are locked in with Street Hoops, and today we are pulling this apart piece by piece, layer by layer, because this story is bigger than a bad leaderboard. This story is about a league that appears to be so uncomfortable with the inevitable, unavoidable, mathematically undeniable rise of its most popular player that it went and built a tool, powered by Amazon Web Services no less, with all the cloud computing credibility that branding implies. And that tool, somehow, someway, produced a gravity leaderboard that ranks Marina Mabrey above Caitlin Clark. Marina Mabrey above Caitlin Clark in a category called gravity. Let that sentence exist in your brain for a moment. Really let it live there. And then let us get into it. First, I want to establish what this statistic is actually claiming to measure, because I think a lot of the discourse around this has skipped past the foundational absurdity and gone straight to the outrage. And the outrage is valid, believe me. We are getting there. But I want to make sure every single person watching this video understands exactly what the WNBA said this stat does before we examine what it actually produced. According to the official league description, gravity is defined as a metric that quantifies how much a player pulls defenders toward them above what the spacing on the floor would predict. They describe it as measuring the players who shift defenses and change the game with every touch. The language they used in rolling this out was ambitious. First of its kind, inside the game, powered by AWS Cloud. They presented this as a sophisticated, cutting-edge analytical tool that would reveal hidden truths about the game that traditional box score statistics cannot capture. They wanted credit for innovation. They wanted to be seen as a forward-thinking league embracing the future of sports analytics. And in terms of the concept, the raw idea of trying to quantify defensive gravity, I will give them that. The concept is not stupid. Measuring which players force defenses to make impossible choices, which players draw so much attention that everybody around them gets easier looks, which players fundamentally bend the geometry of the floor simply by being on it. That is a genuinely interesting thing to try to capture. The execution, however, is where this thing collapsed so completely that it took the league's credibility down with it. Because here is the thing about gravity as a basketball concept. Here is what it actually looks like when you watch games. Gravity is Caitlin Clark getting picked up at half court by a defender who is terrified of giving her a step of runway, because everyone in the building knows she will pull up from 35 feet and drain it. Gravity is the moment Clark catches the basketball on the wing, and two defenders immediately collapse toward her, leaving one of her teammates standing completely alone at the arc with a wide-open look. Gravity is the double teams that come before she has even made a move. The defensive schemes drawn up in film sessions specifically designed to take her out of rhythm. The opposing coaches who spend a disproportionate amount of their preparation time figuring out how to limit one player's influence on the game. That is what gravity looks like with your eyes. That is the observable, undeniable, visually obvious reality of what Caitlin Clark does to opposing defenses every single night she steps on that floor. She does not just draw attention, she warps the entire defensive ecosystem around her. She makes the game easier for everyone else on her team, not because she is passing the ball, though she is. She leads the entire league in assists, but because even when she does not have the ball, defenses are thinking about where she is. That is gravity. That is the textbook definition of what this stat was supposed to identify. And the algorithm looked at all of that and said, you know what? Marina Mabrey has more of it. I want to be precise here because I am going to say something that might surprise you coming from me in the middle of what is clearly a very critical segment. Marina Mabrey is a basketball player, a real one. She can shoot, she has craft. On a good night, she can fill it up and make life difficult for whoever is guarding her. I am not here to clown on Marina Mabrey the person or Marina Mabrey the basketball player. But if you watch a game featuring Marina Mabrey and a game featuring Caitlin Clark back-to-back, and your analytical system concludes that Mabrey is pulling defenders toward her with greater frequency and greater urgency than Clark is, something has gone deeply wrong somewhere in that system. Either the inputs are wrong, or the model is wrong, or And this is the option that an uncomfortable number of people immediately jumped to when this list went public, and I am going to address it directly because I think it deserves to be addressed directly. The desired output was decided first, and the model was built backward from there. That last possibility is the one that has the basketball world talking. And based on everything we know about this league's 2-year history with Caitlin Clark, it is not a possibility that should be dismissed easily. Let us talk about that history for a minute, because context is everything, and this gravity stat does not exist in a vacuum. From the moment Caitlin Clark entered this league, there has been a persistent, documented, widely observed tension between the organic reality of her impact and the league's official posture toward her. The attendance numbers told one story. The merchandise numbers told one story. The television ratings told one story. The social media engagement told one story. All of those stories had the same main character, and they all pointed in the same direction. Clark arrived, and the WNBA's visibility in American sports culture shifted in ways that the league had been working toward for decades without achieving. That is not a controversial statement. That is a documented fact supported by every relevant metric the sports business industry uses to measure cultural impact. And yet, from the awards conversations to the scheduling decisions, to the way her highlights have historically been treated in official league communications, there has been a consistent pattern of the institution being slower to celebrate her than the market was. Fans noticed it, media noticed it, players around the league noticed it, and commented on it in various ways. The league has never fully reckoned with that pattern publicly. And now, right in the middle of a season where Caitlin Clark is statistically having one of the most dominant years any player in this league has ever had, the league rolls out a brand new proprietary statistic, powered by a major corporate partner, and that statistic somehow finds a way to not have her name near the top. The timing alone is extraordinary. Now let us actually look at what Caitlin Clark is doing on the basketball court this season, because I think it is important to anchor this conversation in the production numbers before we go any further into the institutional analysis. She is averaging nearly 24 points per game. She is shooting above 40% from the field and sitting around 35% from three-point range, which in the context of the volume she is attempting those threes at, is genuinely impressive efficiency. She leads the entire league in assists. She leads the entire league in double-doubles. She leads the league in fantasy points, which functions as a composite production score across all statistical categories. She has set the all-time WNBA record for games with 20 or more points combined with 10 or more assists. Let me say that one more time because I want it to land properly. She has set the all-time record in WNBA history for games combining that level of scoring with that level of playmaking. That record does not belong to players from last year or 5 years ago. It belongs to the entire history of the league. And she set it in year 3. She is third in the league in scoring. She is first in assists by a significant margin. She is 6th in three-pointers made, and she missed a game. These are the numbers of the league's most valuable player. These are not borderline numbers. These are not numbers you have to squint at and build a creative argument around. These are numbers that in any other league, covering any other player, would have the entire sporting media world already writing the coronation piece. And yet the official league gravity leaderboard could not find room for her in the top tier. The disconnect between what the numbers show and what the leaderboard produced is not a rounding error. It is a chasm. Here is what makes the specific construction of this stat even more maddening when you think about it carefully. They chose to call it gravity. Of all the names available to them, of all the branding options that Amazon Web Services and the WNBA's marketing department could have landed on, they chose the word that most precisely and most specifically describes what Caitlin Clark does to defenses: gravity. The force that pulls everything toward a central mass, the invisible but overwhelming power that bends space around it. They picked that word. They built a metric around that concept. They partnered with a trillion-dollar technology company to give it credibility and institutional weight, and then the metric produced a list where the player who most visibly, most dramatically, most undeniably embodies that concept in the current WNBA season is not at the top of it. If you were writing this as fiction, nobody would believe it. The irony is too on the nose. The word they chose to name their stat is literally the word that fans use every day to describe the thing that Caitlin Clark does that the stat says she does not do enough of. You cannot make this up. And the public responded accordingly. I want to spend a moment on the fan and media reaction because it was remarkable even by the standards of WNBA social media discourse, which is not exactly known for being mild. The response was immediate and it was unified in a way that you rarely see when it comes to debates about basketball statistics. Fans who disagree about almost everything else when it comes to Caitlin Clark, fans who have different takes on her shot selection, her defense, her leadership style, her relationship with her teammates, found common ground on this. Because this was not a close call. This was not a situation where you could look at the leaderboard and say, well, I see the argument for some of these placements, even if I might rank things differently. This was a situation where the list looked so disconnected from anything you could observe by watching actual basketball games that the only reasonable responses were laughter, confusion, or anger. The internet served up all three in roughly equal measure. And the league, as of the time we are putting this video together, has not offered a meaningful explanation for how the model produced these results. No methodology breakdown. No acknowledgement that the outputs look strange. Nothing. Just the list, sitting there, radiating wrongness. I want to take a broader view here for a moment because I think there is something important living in this story that goes beyond the WNBA specifically and touches on something every sports fan should be thinking about. We are in the middle of a full-scale analytics revolution across professional sports. Every league, every team, every data company is racing to own the next proprietary metric. They want to be the organization that introduced the concept that changed how we evaluate talent and performance. And as I said at the top, when analytics are done with intellectual honesty and genuine empirical rigor, they add real value. They reveal things the eye test misses. They correct biases that traditional statistics embed. They make us smarter about the game. But here is the thing that does not get said enough in these conversations. When the organization commissioning the metric has a stake in what that metric produces, when the league itself is building and publishing the statistic, and the league itself has a complicated, documented, publicly observable relationship with the player that honest data keeps pushing to the top of every list, you have a conflict of interest that no amount of cloud computing infrastructure can neutralize. The question of who builds the metric and why they build it matters just as much as how they build it. And in this specific case, the league that has a 2-year history of being slow to celebrate its most commercially impactful player commissioned a brand new metric specifically designed to identify the most impactful players and produced a list that does not have her at the top. You are allowed to find that suspicious. You are allowed to say so out loud. Dre Fiverr is saying so out loud right now. Let me give you my personal gravity leaderboard, because if the WNBA is handing out rankings on this concept, I am absolutely handing out my own. And I want to be clear that mine was not generated by an algorithm, was not powered by cloud computing, and was not built around any predetermined output. Mine is built on watching basketball games with functioning eyes and a working brain. Number 1. Caitlin Clark. Not close. The defensive attention she draws, the schemes built specifically to contain her, the full court pressure that no other guard in this league receives on a routine basis. She is the gravity leader, and it is not a competition. Number 2. Aya Wilson. Because Aya is the most dominant front court player in the league, and defenses are absolutely terrified of her in the paint in ways that warp how the whole offensive ecosystem around her operates. Number 3. Paige Buchers, based on what she has shown this season in terms of forcing defensive decisions and creating advantages for her teammates. After that, the conversation opens up. Angel Reese draws real interior attention. Kelsey Plum at her best forces defenses to make impossible choices on the perimeter. Sabrina Ionescu commands respect. That is a gravity leaderboard. That is a list that survives contact with reality. You are welcome to debate the order in the comments, but I promise you every name on my list was earned by watching the games rather than by reverse engineering a model to avoid a specific outcome. Here is what I want to close on before we get to the call to action, because I think this is the part that matters most. The WNBA is in a genuinely remarkable moment right now. Attendance is climbing. Television numbers are climbing. Young fans who had never watched a single WNBA game before 2 years ago are now devoted, passionate followers of this league. The sport of women's basketball has a cultural footprint in this country right now that it has never had before, and that footprint is growing. There are real stars across this league: Clark, Wilson, Buchers, Reese, Ionescu, and the rising visibility is genuinely lifting the whole enterprise. This is a moment that leagues spend decades trying to manufacture and rarely achieve organically. And the question that this gravity stat controversy forces you to ask is a painful one. Does the leadership of this league understand what it has? Do the people making institutional decisions understand that you do not manage a moment like this? You celebrate it, you amplify it, you put your best asset on every platform you have access to, and you let the world fall in love? Because the pattern of behavior over the last 2 years, the slow awards recognition, the scheduling complications, the strange reluctance to simply crown the phenomenon that is happening right in front of them, and now a proprietary AI-generated statistic that buries her in a category built to celebrate exactly what she does. That pattern does not look like a league that understands what it has. That pattern looks like a league that is still trying to manage a player it was not fully prepared for, Rather than riding the wave she created straight to the mainstream legitimacy they have always wanted. And that is the real tragedy buried inside this gravity stat story. The miss is not just statistical, the miss is strategic, and the clock on this particular moment does not run forever. That is Street Hoops for today, and I want to hear from every single one of you in those comments. Does this gravity stat situation look like a modeling error to you, or does it look like something more intentional? Drop your take below, because this community has the sharpest basketball minds on this platform, and I want to know what you see. Smash the like button right now if this video gave you something to think about. It tells the algorithm that real fans care about real basketball conversations, and it helps us reach more people who deserve to hear this. Subscribe to Street Hoops if you are not already locked in, because this is the channel that never softens the take, never flinches from the uncomfortable truth, and never stops asking the questions that need to be asked. Hit the notification bell so you catch every single drop the moment it goes live. I am Dre Fiver. No filter, no agenda, no backing down. We will see you on the next one.